Terence Crawford is unknown, says Eddie Hearn, will never be as popular as Errol Spence Jr. What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Cardinal Red Sports. Let's talk about it. Alright, so recently in an interview with Fight Hype TV, Eddie Hearn spoke on Terence Crawford and what he feels like is the reason Crawford hasn't been as big or as famous or as popular as a fighter as most people believe he should be. And why he thinks he will never be as popular as Errol the Truth Spence Jr. Now, I just wanted to give my 2 cents on whether I feel like that is true, whether I feel like, Eddie Hearn is just hating on Crawford, or is Eddie Hearn trying to give Terence Crawford some friendly promotional advice? Eddie Hearn had the opportunity to sign Terence Crawford, but I think a lot of people, a lot of promoters passed on that opportunity. I'm not sure if it was based off of what Bob Arum had to say, or if it was based off of what they know as promoters. Like, these guys know numbers. These guys can go check, whether your pay-per-views are popular, whether the fans are really engaged. They have all this information at their fingertips. So, any promoter could give Terence Crawford some quality advice and could probably tell him exactly why he isn't as popular as he should be. Now, Eddie Hearn started off with one fact that I think is pretty interesting. He spoke on the fact that Terence Crawford wasn't being pushed correctly as a younger fighter. Not only that the fact that he wanted to be popular within the state of Nebraska, Omaha, that area, and the area is just not conducive or doesn't sell boxing very well. Like, he was saying that nowhere in Nebraska could Terence Crawford fill a venue or sell out a venue as a boxer. And I think that that's very interesting because, a place like Nebraska, a lot of people in America, especially like people from Cali, people from Texas, people from Florida, people from, New York, Chicago, those four corners of the country where, there is no shortage of popularity or people or eyeballs to be placed on your product. When you talk about a place like Nebraska, people kind of think of it as the middle of nowhere. And, the one crazy thing is a rapper from the middle of nowhere could probably come to Nebraska and sell out a show. But why can't Terence Crawford do that within his hometown? And even if he does do that within his hometown, is it even as impressive as somebody, let's say, in Houston, Texas, selling out a show? Because there are so many more people in Houston, Texas than there is in Omaha, Nebraska. The opportunities are much bigger being from a bigger state or being in a state with more people. Even in a state like Kentucky, there's only about 1 million, maybe 1.5 million people unofficially in Louisville, because they don't, people don't fill out the census, so we'll never know exactly how many people's in Louisville. But we have the same problem here. Being a local celebrity really means nothing. You could have the whole state backing you here, and nobody outside of the state would even know who you are, because nobody outside of this state is looking for local Kentucky talent. Unfortunately, local Louisville talent. Unfortunately, unless you're going to one of the big schools here. Now, if you're involved with one of the big schools here, then it's a different story. Now, Eddie Hearn mentioned some other things about Terence Crawford's popularity. He said that Crawford, being 34 years of age, is picking the wrong time to try to be famous. Like, he's going about it in the wrong way. He felt like him choosing a fight like David Avanesyan and wanting a $10 million purse is absurd, in his words. He said that was absurd for him to feel like he deserved $10 million for that fight. And that's coming from another promoter, a promoter who's not Bob Arum, a promoter who's not Al Heyman. Eddie Hearn's product pretty recognizable at the moment. Eddie Hearn's product is pretty popular at the moment. So I wouldn't say Eddie Hearn doesn't know what he's talking about. He also mentioned the fact that if you're wanting $10 million for an Avanesyan fight, that means you want $25 million for a Errol Spence Jr. fight. So you can go ahead and probably pretty much cancel the Errol Spence fight, because Terence Crawford, in a nutshell, or for lack of a better word, is pricing himself out of that fight. And whether that's done on purpose or whether that's something he's doing unconsciously, because in his own mind he feels like he's more popular than he is, it's to be argued. Terence Crawford, I definitely think, was sold a bunch of dreams in his build-up at Top Rank, and he's never woken up from those dreams. He's never saw those dreams actually come to reality. In his mind, in Bob Arum's mind, he was the most popular fighter in the world, in the country, in the world. Not just from Nebraska, but in the world. ESPN has him pound for pound. A lot of these agencies, these boxing sporting agencies, have him pound for pound number one. But in the eyes of the fans, in the reality of the situation, there's so many other fighters that are much more popular, much more famous, and that put on better competition than Terence Crawford. It's almost like Terence Crawford enjoys being a local celebrity. Like, he doesn't want to be anything outside of the most famous boxer in Omaha, Nebraska. And it's kind of crazy, because when you look at fighters like Tyson Fury, I'm not a big Tyson Fury fan. I really don't think Tyson Fury is that talented as a fighter. I just think he's much bigger than most of the heavyweights, and it gives him a natural advantage. And a lot of these heavyweights are of the mindset of, I gotta knock everybody out, so they go into the fight with the wrong game plan, and they end up getting beat up on by a bigger man, because they want to be a brute, or they want to go brute and be the big guy knocking everybody out, when in boxing sometimes it's more of a thinking man's game when you're out-muscled. So you need to go in with a different game plan and try to break the bigger man down. But nobody does that. I kind of feel the same way about Terence Crawford. He goes about his career as if he's already famous. In his mind, he's already famous. But in the reality of the situation, in the bigger picture, nobody outside of Nebraska really knows who he is. Now, there are some other hardcore fight fans, Terence Crawford fans, who know who Terence Crawford is. But there is such a small amount of people, such a small segmented amount of people, that he will never reach that upper echelon of boxing or popularity, especially compared to a guy like Errol Spence, because he doesn't do the things that he's supposed to do to get himself over those popularity humps. Errol Spence went after the best fights. Errol Spence went after champions and won those fights, and it made him wildly popular. Now, the fact that he's from a big state like Texas that has a lot of people helped him, but if he didn't go after those championship fights, and if he went into some of those championship fights and lost, believe me, the people of Texas wouldn't care about Errol Spence Jr., unfortunately. Now, I think that that's a sign of the times of boxing, to where, the old means a lot to fans nowadays. But I think because of the way Errol Spence went about it, going after champions and beating champions, it made him more popular, because it showed his skill sets, it showed his willingness to fight the best, it showed that he's not afraid of any of these guys. I think with Terence Crawford and him choosing the type of fights that he chooses, it makes him seem a little cowardly, makes him seem a little unconfident in himself, and it makes him seem like his skill sets are not as good as he believes they are in his own mind. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that down in the comment section below. Is Eddie Hearn right? Is Terence Crawford unknown, unpopular, will never be as popular as Errol Spence Jr., and has he gone down the wrong road when it comes to his boxing career? Has he taken the wrong journey? Has he gone about it in the wrong way? And is him being from Omaha, Nebraska, actually holding him back? Hit that like button for me, share. Subscribe. Holler at me on all social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. More than likely to get a response on the tube. Holler at me over there. And Twitter. And we are Manny.
He's low. That's why they hating on me. He's low. That's why they hating on me. He's low. That's why they hating on me. He's low. Feel niggas hate local music, but yet and still I promote the music. A hard-headed nigga couldn't coach me through shit. I thought they wouldn't hate, my approach is too sick. Motion music, promote the movement. They play it in the crowd and they both is moving. The chicks and G's bumping their head instantly. It never made no sense to me how a nigga gotta leave the Ville just to receive a deal. I need the bills, so if I gotta leave I will. But I'd rather stay, let them see the skills. Shoot a video, let them see the Ville. Do a couple scenes on 18th and Hill. Now open up wide, let them see your grill. That boy Keys is for real. But he's low.